The odds were almost insurmountable. Even Han Solo might have hesitated. How could there ever have been another? Star Wars, that wouldn't draw the ire of its fans, following George Lucas's polarizing prequels. By the time Lucas personally chose Kathleen Kennedy to lead Lucasfilm in May 2012, as he prepared to step back, Star Wars fandom had seemingly settled into a perpetual state of grievance, with 3 decades of experience producing some of the biggest blockbusters of all time, like E.T., The Extraterrestrial, and the Indiana Jones series. Alongside Steven Spielberg, Kennedy seemed like the perfect candidate to guide the galaxy far, far away into a new era. That promise felt tangible on October 30th, 2012, when Disney acquired Lucasfilm for $4.3 billion and announced a new Star Wars trilogy. Beginning with Star Wars Episode 7, Kennedy was now at the helm of the beloved franchise. As a lifelong fan, I remember huddling in my powerless New York City apartment after Hurricane Sandy. The news a bright spark of hope. Kennedy's recent success with Lincoln underscored her pedigree. Before joining Lucasfilm, she'd garnered 8 Best Picture nominations, not just for Spielberg films, but also for works like The Sixth Sense, Seabiscuit, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. She left behind the Kennedy Marshall Company, which she ran with her husband Frank Marshall, to lead Star Wars forward. But 12.5 years later, that promise feels hollow. While Kennedy oversaw some franchise highs, The Last Jedi, Andor, the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, the lows have often overshadowed them, leaving even diehard fans questioning the future of Star Wars. Since The Last Jedi, Kennedy has become a lightning rod for the most toxic corners of the fan base. Those who seem to revel more in tearing down the franchise than celebrating it. Kennedy's era coincided with the rise of a new grift, monetized outrage. An entire class of YouTubers and social media figures emerged, their livelihoods fueled by stoking rage and negativity. Even universally praised projects like Andor couldn't escape their manufactured derision. In this context, Kennedy was thrust into an impossible battle. Her situation was akin to the Kobayashi Maru of Star Trek, a no-win scenario. Looking back, Star Wars under Kennedy's leadership became a microcosm of broader cultural conflicts, embodying America's deep political and social divides. Simultaneously, Lucasfilm's tumultuous production history mirrored Hollywood's struggle between creative freedom and franchise-driven storytelling. By committee, over the past decade, Star Wars discourse ceased to be about storytelling or art. The franchise became a symbol, a battleground for ideological skirmishes where Kennedy, a traditional film producer, was set up to fail. Kennedy's record is not without blemish. While she championed creative freedom, The Last Jedi remains the only Star Wars film under her tenure where the director, Rian Johnson, had full creative control. Projects like Solo: A Star Wars Story saw creative differences lead to the departure of Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who went on to win an Oscar for Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse. Rogue One was largely taken over by Tony Gilroy, despite Gareth Edwards being credited as director. The turnover of talent reflected a deeper issue, hiring directors who might not have been prepared for such high-stakes projects, a problem that ultimately rested with Kennedy. This pattern continued, with countless scrapped projects and a perception shift within the industry. Kennedy, once seen as a filmmaker's ally, became associated with corporate mandates and branding over artistic vision. Her approach evolved, or perhaps regressed, to favor controllable directors, mirroring broader industry trends. In many ways, Kennedy's plight was inevitable. The Force Awakens, the first film under her leadership, felt like an apology tour for the prequels. Its opening line, "This will begin to make things right," set the tone. Lucasfilm was listening to the fans. However, letting fans dictate creative direction set a dangerous precedent. The franchise became beholden to an ever-fracturing audience, leading to a vicious cycle of creative decisions aimed at appeasement rather than innovation. The fallout was evident with The Rise of Skywalker, a movie that tried to retcon The Last Jedi and ended up satisfying no one. It was a rare and glaring example of creative surrender in Hollywood, a movie, by committee, devoid of vision or risk-taking. It marked a broader trend, where even Marvel Studios, once the crown jewel of franchise filmmaking, began to falter. Kennedy's legacy is complicated. Her attention to detail and genuine care for the franchise were undeniable. I experienced this firsthand while writing Star Wars books under Disney's early stewardship of the brand. She saw value in onboarding new fans and ensuring the galaxy remained accessible. But somewhere along the line, the passion for Star Wars became a liability. Her reputation shifted from a champion of storytellers to a figure maligned by both sides of the cultural divide. Perhaps Kennedy cared too much. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. A leader whose love for Star Wars led to choices that, over time, turned her into a symbol of everything she never wanted to become. In trying to give fans what they wanted, she ended up lost. Much like Anakin Skywalker, a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting passion steer into obsession. The question now is not just whether Kennedy will retire, but what legacy she will leave behind. And, more importantly, where Star Wars can go from here in a landscape where storytelling has become secondary to the endless churn of discourse and division.